Okay, so in this lecture, we are actually going to use our EC2 instance to launch an Apache server on it. So we'll install an Apache web server and we'll basically deploy a web page. And for this web page, we'll just create something called index.html that will show the host name of our machine. So pretty simple, but let's go ahead. It's going to be a bit of fun and we'll get to practice our security groups. The first thing I have to do is to get the public IP because I changed it too many times. And then I will go into my instance and SSH into it using PuTTY or SSH, whatever you have as an operating system. So now that I am into my machine, it's time to go ahead and run some commands. So the first thing I'm going to do is sudo su, and this will basically elevate my rights on the machine. I am now the root account and I can run any command I want without any problem. So the first thing I want to do is yum update and -y. This basically forces my machine to update itself, and it's really important to keep all the packages updated. The -y was to basically allow the updates to go through without prompting me to say, yes, I want to update. Once yum update is done, what we can do is start installing httpd, okay? So to do this, we're going to do yum install -y httpd.x86_64. So that's a little bit complicated, but I'm sure you'll be okay. Then we basically install httpd, and the -y was used to basically say yes and not have a prompt. Now I can clear my screen. And to start the service, we do systemctl start httpd.service, and this starts the service. And to ensure that the system remains enabled across reboots, we say enable httpd.service. So these two commands basically allowed us to start the HTTP service and make sure it is enabled across reboots. Now let's go ahead and see what happens. If we do a curl on localhost 80, we should see this entire page. So curl is basically to load whatever is in this URL. So if we do curl localhost 80, then we get this giant HTML page that is not very friendly, but it's working. So we kind of want to have this in a web browser, right? So why don't we access it from my web browser? We go to our EC2 instance and look at our public IP address. So what we have to do is open HTTP and then the IP address right here, port 80, which is just the HTTP port, and press enter. And as we can see, now we just wait and wait and wait. What does that look like? That looks like a timeout. So around timeouts, what do we say? We said that, yes, anytime there's a timeout issue, it's probably an error with the security group. Yes, indeed. If we go to view the inbound rules of our security group, we can see that it only allows port 22. But our Apache server was started on port 80. So what we have to do is open up that port 80 so we can access it. So I go to my security group. In the inbound rules, I can edit and add a rule. Here in the dropdown, there is already an HTTP rule ready for us. So we create HTTP, TCP on port 80, and the custom will just say 000/0, and we'll say allow HTTP traffic for Apache. Click on save, everything looks fine. And now if you go to our web page and reload it, so let's go ahead and stop this and now paste it, we can see that we got through. So by changing that security group and allowing this rule for port 80, we are able to get to our test page. And our test page basically says that it is a proper installation of the Apache HTTP server. And we basically now have to add some content to var www/html. So let's go ahead and do this. For this, I'm going to clear my screen and I'm going to echo hello world into var www.html index.html. So basically now, if I go to my web browser and refresh this page, we now see hello world. So that's awesome. We just displayed a first web page on our machine. Now, because I want to make things a little bit more interesting for this tutorial, I'll do hello world from, and then $, and here we can enter a command, hostname -f, and then we'll put this into the same file. Basically what this does is that we'll make sure it says hello world and then the hostname of our machine. If you run this command right here, hostname -f, it should say IP, then the public IP, the private IP, the region you're in, .compute.internal. So now basically when we go back to a web browser and reload this, it says hello world from IP and the IP of our machine. And this is actually not the IP, this is the internal DNS. So that's about right. Now we get a hello world and we know which machine we're talking to. So that's pretty awesome. So this was a quick lecture to install HTTP Apache server, because in the next lecture, we're going to automate this installation using EC2 user data. So let's get started.